Well, Africa's quest for improved intra-regional trade could become a reality. This after the continent's leaders agreed to increase public spending on infrastructure and set in motion a program to create a Continental Free Trade Area by 2017. Joining us for more are Jean Craven, who's head of corporate finance at Export Trading Group, and Thea Fourie, who's an economist of the Sub-Saharan Economics at IHS Global Insights. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's get straight into where we stand right now, because there's no denying that there's been an abundance of blueprints in how we're going to be getting inter-regional trade, right? How are you rating the progress we're making and implementation of those policies?
Well, it's as most things in Africa, it's going a bit slow, but there's definitely progress being made. If you look at intra-regional trade in the region, latest stats from a Standard Bank report indicate that we only trade about 20% of all trade in Africa is interregional versus 80% in Europe and 60% in Asia. So we're definitely losing out quite a bit, but then again, there's a lot of upside.
There's a lot of upside potential if we leverage off the opportunity specifically. What are some of the challenges we need to deal with, some of the hurdles that need to be cleared at this stage?
Well, I think that there's been a lot said about the infrastructural deficit that's really making trade across borders, very difficult. Those non-trade barriers. Also, sometimes you have the operational problems at borders where you have a lot of congestions at the borders that's really delaying trade and that's really pushing up costs. So those are some of the hurdles that we are facing. And I also think the lack of industrialization amongst different countries. At this stage, many members in Africa produce the same products in a country, which really leaves little incentive to trade across borders. So we really need to step up Africa's industrialization diversification over the long term to also boost trade among different countries in the continent.
Do you see there being enough of a government, enforcing this from a regulatory perspective and a policy perspective? I mean, you mentioned things like, moving through borders, pretty cumbersome right now. Are moves to make that flow of commodity, flow of people, goods, easier?
I think that is an objective of the free trade agreement set out by the African Union under NEPAD. That is definitely objective. So I think governments are well aware of these constraints, and they do know that they have to step up, the future policies and infrastructural deficits regarding these issues. But I think, like Jean said, it's very slow. Implementation is slow. Really the first priority is that they have to recognize the fact that the REC, they need to really step up their efforts to integrate and not really operate separately, but really look at it to operate as a union. All these things are necessary to address these bottlenecks.
Should we, looking at the slow progress and that being a reality, should we be happy that progress is being made at least? Or is there work needing to be done to look at this a little bit more seriously and start prioritizing at a greater level?
Well, I think as Thea said, there are some areas in Africa or some groupings where one can see progress more expedient. Take East Africa. I think if you look at interregional trade, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, as an example, certainly a shining star on the continent. And I think, if the continent pulls together, through the African Union or any similar body, we need to see a broader working together, of these different economic zones. And prioritize it. We've seen a lot of papers on where the bottlenecks are, and the plans out there, and the plans do make sense. Certainly, border crossings, paperwork, all the cumbersome processes one has to go through, to stimulate this interregional trade. But I think we have to put more emphasis on getting this implemented, and implementation on the continent is a challenge.
And perhaps draw from lessons already learned. You've highlighted the East African region specifically, and we've seen that progress come to the fore as a result of the East African Common Market Protocol having been signed. What are the lessons that we need to start extracting from their experience and putting them out there as case studies?
I think the Certainly, the engagement, inter-regional engagement between the local governments in East Africa, certainly one does see the engagement taking place on a regular basis. Communication to the players in industry, certainly. So I think this is certainly lessons people in SADC and even in West Africa we can take from. I think there's a heightened level of discussion and workshops taking place, and with also bringing in or giving the opportunity to business to comment. So I think interaction certainly needs to be lifted in order to better the situation and the rate of implementation.
If we do get this right, what do you see this doing to FDI flows from our foreign bodies? Because of course, then they're coming into Africa and looking at leveraging off the opportunity even more so, as opposed to targeting single countries.
Absolutely. I think we've got 54 sovereign countries in sub-Saharan Africa, with different population sizes, different per capita income, different resource availability and developments. And if we can really bring that together, that will really create a critical mass which will be much more attractive for any foreign investor. Just to take, for instance, I think the free trade area, if we can get this right, this opens up a market of 600 million people, and I think GDP in US dollars of 1 trillion US dollars. So it's different ball game, and you really have the advantages of economy of scales if we can get this right. And in IHS's view, this is an important factor for sustainable growth for the region up to 2050 to really get regional trade going.